The wedding hall was still glowing with soft golden lights when Alina stepped outside, her heavy dress brushing against the marble floor. Everything looked perfect from the outside, the flowers, the music, the smiling guests, but inside her chest, something felt strangely hollow. She couldn't explain it, but the entire night she had been sensing a quiet distance in her new husband, Rayyan. People said weddings were magical, a beginning filled with joy. But for Alina, it felt like she was stepping into a story she didn't fully understand. Rayyan had barely spoken to her after the ceremony. He held her hand, yes, but gently, almost politely, as if she were a guest he was obligated to attend to, not his bride. Every time she looked at him, he smiled, but his eyes drifted away too quickly, as if afraid of something she couldn't see. When they finally reached the house that was supposed to be their first home together, Rayyan quietly unlocked the door and guided her inside. No excitement, no teasing comments, no warmth. Just silence. The house was beautiful, modern furniture, soft lighting, rose petals scattered on the floor, clearly arranged earlier for a romantic night. But even that didn't ease the tightness in her stomach. "Rayyan, are you okay?" she finally asked, her voice delicate. He froze for a second, then forced a smile. "Just tired, Alina. It was a long day." She nodded slowly, trying to convince herself that exhaustion was the only reason for his coldness. But deep down, she knew it wasn't true. Weddings were long for everyone, yet newly married couples usually glowed with excitement. Rayyan looked more like a man carrying a hidden weight. He walked her to the room prepared for them, candles lit, soft music playing. But instead of stepping inside with her, he paused at the doorway. "I need to check something in the study," he said. "I'll join you in a few minutes." Before she could respond, he walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Alina stood in the doorway, her heart sinking. "What is he hiding?" she whispered to herself. As she stepped inside the candlelit room and sat on the edge of the bed, she had no idea that tonight, their wedding night, would unravel a truth she was never prepared to face. The soft glow of the candles flickered as Alina sat alone, fingers nervously twisting the edge of her dupatta. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then 30. Still no sign of Rayyan. She tried distracting herself, smoothing the bedsheet, adjusting the ornaments on the side table, pacing the room, but the silence of the house pressed against her ears like a weight. It was their first night together, there was no reason for him to disappear like this. Finally, unable to sit any longer, she stood up and stepped into the hallway. The study room door was half closed, a thin line of light spilling out onto the floor. She hesitated. Should she go inside? Should she knock? Or would that make her look insecure? Before she could decide, a sound drifted from the study. A whisper. Very faint, but unmistakable. A woman's voice. Alina's heart slammed painfully against her ribs. She moved closer, slow and cautious. The door creaked slightly as she pushed it open just a few inches more. Inside, Rayyan stood with his back towards her, phone pressed to his ear. "No, tonight isn't possible," he said quietly, his tone strained. "Please, don't call me right now." Alina's breath caught. Who was he talking to with so much urgency? She listened, her palms growing cold. The woman's voice crackled through the phone speaker, soft, emotional, trembling. "Rayyan, you promised. You said after the wedding," Rayyan cut her off sharply. "I know what I said, but things have changed. You need to understand." Alina felt her world tilt slightly. Her vision blurred. She squeezed the doorframe to steady herself. "Rayyan," the woman whispered again. "I can't lose you." For a second, Rayyan didn't answer. He swallowed hard, rubbing his forehead as though he were fighting some invisible storm. Finally, he spoke, voice low, conflicted, almost broken. "I'll call you tomorrow. Please, just give me a little time." Tomorrow? Tomorrow for what? Alina stepped back quietly, her heartbeat roaring in her ears. She didn't let the door make a sound, she didn't want him to know she had heard anything. She hurried back to their room, shutting the door behind her with trembling hands. She sat on the bed, her chest tightening. Who was that woman? Why was Rayyan promising her something? Why did he sound so desperate? When Rayyan finally entered the room 10 minutes later, his face looked composed, too composed. He didn't know Alina had heard every word. And she didn't know her life was about to change forever. Rayyan walked into the room with a calmness that felt almost unnatural. His eyes briefly met Alina's, but he looked away just as quickly, as if afraid she might see something hidden behind them. Sorry, he said softly. The study kept me longer than I expected. Alina forced a small smile. It's okay. Her voice sounded steady, but inside, every emotion was rising like a storm. Should she confront him? Should she pretend she heard nothing? Should she wait? She chose silence, for now. Rayyan sat on the opposite side of the bed, keeping just enough distance to make the gap feel like an ocean. He loosened his tie, then leaned back, closing his eyes. The tension in his shoulders was visible even through his shirt. Alina studied him quietly. His breathing was uneven. His fingers were shaking slightly. He looked like a man trapped between guilt and fear. Rayyan, she finally whispered. He opened his eyes slowly. Are you sure everything's all right? For a moment, he just stared. Something flickered in his eyes, guilt, regret, maybe pain, but he swallowed it down and forced a smile. Of course. I told you, I'm just tired. She nodded, but the lie hung in the air between them like smoke. Just then, the silence of the night was broken by a soft thud downstairs. Followed by another. And another. Alina's eyes widened. Did you hear that? Rayyan stiffened. His entire body went rigid for a split second, a reaction far stronger than what a normal noise should cause. That's just, maybe the wind, he said quickly, almost too quickly. Alina frowned. The wind doesn't make footsteps. Rayyan stood up immediately. Stay here. I'll check. Before she could protest, he walked out of the room, shutting the door behind him with a firmness that made her heart twist. Footsteps echoed through the hallway, his at first, then another pair. Soft. Careful. Unfamiliar. Alina stood up, her breath catching in her throat. She reached the door, pressing her ear against it. Faint whispers floated through the silence. Rayyan's voice. Low. Urgent. But then, a second voice. Not the woman from the phone. Someone else. Someone inside the house. A chill ran down Alina's spine. Who else was here? Her wedding night was turning into something she could no longer understand. And the worst part? She could hear the fear in Rayyan's voice, as if the person he was speaking to wasn't supposed to exist. Alina couldn't stand still any longer. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong, terribly wrong. She opened the door slightly and stepped into the dim hallway. The whispers had grown clearer, though still impossible to fully understand. One thing was certain, Rayyan wasn't alone. Her bare feet moved silently on the wooden floor as she followed the faint murmurs toward the staircase. Halfway down, she stopped. The house was dark except for a small lamp near the living room, casting long shadows on the walls. Rayyan stood near the kitchen doorway, his back to her. Another figure stood opposite him, half hidden behind the counter. Alina's breath caught. It was a man, tall, tense, dressed in dark clothes. His presence felt wrong, like a shadow that didn't belong. Why are you here? Rayyan whispered harshly. The stranger's voice was low but steady. You know why. You can't push this aside anymore. Rayyan ran a hand through his hair, frustration pouring off him. Not tonight. Please. Not tonight of all nights. Alina's heart pounded faster. What could possibly be so urgent, and so secret, that someone would come into their home on their wedding night? The man took a step closer to Rayyan. She deserves to know the truth. Alina's breath froze. She? Were they talking about her? Rayyan's voice broke slightly. No. Not yet. I need time. She doesn't have time, the man replied quietly. And you know that. Rayyan shook his head. Just leave before she sees, too late. The floor creaked beneath Alina's foot. Both men turned sharply. Rayyan's eyes widened in shock and fear. Alina? The stranger's gaze locked onto her, cold, unreadable, but not threatening, more like he was studying her. Alina clutched the railing for support. Rayyan, what's happening? Who is he? Rayyan opened his mouth, but words failed him. His face drained of color. The stranger, however, stepped forward calmly. My name is Zion. Alina's pulse spiked. She had never heard that name before. Zion continued, his voice strangely gentle, you should sit down. There are things Rayyan should have told you long before tonight. Rayyan suddenly grabbed Zion's arm. Don't. Please. She's not ready. Zion pulled his arm free with quiet firmness. She's stronger than you think. Alina swallowed hard, fear and confusion twisting inside her. What truth? She whispered. Neither of them answered. But the silence that followed felt like the beginning of a storm she was not prepared to face. Alina's knees threatened to give way, but she forced herself to stand tall. The two men exchanged a silent, heavy look, the kind that meant something bigger was happening beneath the surface. She repeated, voice trembling but firm, Rayyan, what truth? Rayyan's jaw tightened. He looked away, as though admitting the truth meant tearing down walls he had spent years building. Zion stepped forward slowly, his posture calm but his eyes sharp with seriousness. Alina, you were never supposed to be dragged into this. But now that you've heard enough to be in danger, you deserve to know everything. Danger? The word struck her like ice water. Rayyan turned sharply. Zion, don't make it sound worse than it is worse, Zion snapped quietly. And hiding it won't change what's already happening. Alina swallowed hard. What's already happening? Zion glanced at Rayyan, almost giving him one last chance to speak. But Rayyan stayed silent, his head bowed, shoulders shaking slightly. So Zion continued. 2 years ago, he began, Rayyan got involved with a group he should have stayed far away from. Not criminals, but people with power, influence, and secrets, the kind that can ruin lives. Alina stared at Rayyan in disbelief. Rayyan? No, he wouldn't, Rayyan lifted his trembling hands. I didn't choose them, Alina. I was forced. Silence. Zion nodded. He tried to walk away. They don't let people walk away. Alina felt the walls closing in around her. What do they want now? Zion's voice softened. You. The room spun. Me? She whispered, stunned. Why me? Rayyan finally stepped closer, his eyes filled with guilt and fear. Because they think, you're the reason I tried to escape them. That marrying you was my way of breaking ties. But that's not true, she said, her voice breaking. You barely know me. Our families arranged this marriage. Rayyan's face twisted with pain. Exactly. And they don't like anything I don't choose myself. They think you're leverage. Alina felt her heartbeat slam against her ribs. So the woman you were talking to on the phone, Rayyan flinched. That's different. I can explain. Zion cut him off sharply. One problem at a time. The men who follow Rayyan won't be patient. Someone already entered this house tonight. Alina felt the cold truth settle into her bones. Her wedding night wasn't ruined by secrets. It was being hunted by them. For a moment, the world felt painfully silent, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Alina's hands trembled uncontrollably. Her wedding dress, once beautiful and heavy with embroidery, now felt like chains wrapped around her. She looked from Zion to Rayyan, trying to understand how her life had changed so violently in just a few hours. "Someone entered the house," she whispered. "When?" Zion's eyes scanned the dark corners of the living room. "Not long before I arrived. I saw the back gate unlocked. Footprints in the garden mud. Someone was watching." Rayyan ran a hand over his face, dread etched into every line. "They must have followed me from the wedding." Alina's heart dropped. "Followed you? Why?" "To make sure I didn't try to run again," Rayyan said quietly. "Tonight was supposed to be the night they pulled me back in." Alina took a shaky step back. "Then why bring me here? Why marry me if you knew your life was in danger?" Rayyan's eyes softened with a sorrow she didn't expect. "Because I thought, maybe marriage would stop them. Maybe they'd leave me alone if I had someone to protect. I didn't think they would drag you into it." Zion exhaled sharply. "That was your first mistake. They don't care who gets hurt." Alina swallowed hard. "And my family? Are they in danger too?" Both men went silent. Rayyan looked away, guilt heavy on him. Zion stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "If they think she's leverage, they might go after anyone close to her." The room tilted. Alina grabbed the wall for balance. "No, my family can't be part of this. They don't even know what's happening." Rayyan reached out, hesitant, as though afraid she might pull away. "Alina, I swear, I'll keep you safe. I'll protect all of you. I won't let them." Before he could finish, a loud bang echoed from the back of the house. All three of them froze. Another sound followed, a slow, deliberate creak, as if a door was being pushed open. Rayyan's voice turned into a whisper. "They're here." Zion instantly stepped forward, positioning himself between Alina and the noise. He reached beneath his jacket and pulled out something metallic, a small tactical flashlight and a concealed weapon. Alina gasped softly. "Zion, what are you?" He didn't look at her. His gaze was fixed on the dark hallway. "I'm the only reason Rayyan's still alive." The footsteps grew louder. Alina's wedding night was no longer just troubled. It had become a battlefield. The air grew heavy, thick with fear and something darker. Alina's heartbeat thudded in her ears as the slow, deliberate footsteps approached. Zion lifted his arm slightly, signaling Rayyan and Alina to stay behind him. His posture was calm, but his eyes were sharp, calculating every sound. A shadow moved across the far wall. Alina held her breath. Zion pressed his back against the wall and edged forward, silent as a ghost. Rayyan, trembling but determined, moved closer to Alina and placed himself between her and the open hallway. For the first time that night, there was no distance in his eyes, only fear for her. "Stay close," he whispered. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Too much silence. Then, a sudden crash. Glass shattering. A picture frame fell to the floor with a violent clatter. Alina flinched, gripping Rayyan's arm. Zion turned the corner in a swift motion, flashlight slicing through the darkness. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice calm but deadly. No response. He moved deeper into the hallway, his steps measured. The beam of his light caught something, a shoe print, smeared across the polished floor. Fresh. Wet. "Someone came in through the back window," Zion muttered. But they're not alone. Alina felt her stomach drop. What do you mean? The footprints split, Zion said. Two directions. Before anyone could react, a low voice echoed from the other end of the hallway. Rayanne, we warned you. The words slithered through the dark, cold and taunting. Alina's entire body went cold. A figure stepped into view, tall, wearing a hood, face hidden in shadows. He moved with a frightening calmness, like someone who had done this many times before. Rayanne stepped forward instinctively. This has nothing to do with her. Leave Alina out of this. The stranger chuckled softly. Everything has to do with her now. She made you disobey us. She made you believe you could escape. Alina's heart hammered painfully. I didn't even know about any of this. That doesn't matter, the stranger interrupted. You became his weakness the moment he looked at you. Zion raised his weapon slightly. One more step and you won't walk out of here. The stranger tilted his head, unfazed. You think we came unprepared? Another voice answered from behind them. I wouldn't move if I were you. Alina spun around. Another figure stood at the front entrance, blocking their only escape. Two intruders. One in front. One behind. They were trapped. Rayanne's breath shook. Alina grabbed his hand. And for the first time, Rayanne whispered what she feared. I'm sorry, Alina. I never should have brought you into my life. The two intruders stood like shadows closing in on them, blocking every path of escape. Alina felt the world shrinking, the walls pressing closer as the danger wrapped around her like a noose. Zion didn't flinch. His stance shifted, firm and protective. Rayanne, take Alina behind the staircase. Keep her low. Rayanne obeyed instantly, guiding Alina backward, shielding her with his body. His hands trembled, but his grip was unbreakable. The stranger nearest them stepped forward, the dim light grazing his covered face. You were warned, Rayanne, he said, voice ice cold. You can't run from us. Not tonight, not ever. Rayanne's voice cracked. I'm not running. I just want her safe. That's exactly why we're here, the man replied. To take away your reason to rebel. Alina felt tears burn her eyes. I didn't do anything. Why are you punishing me? Because you're a symbol, the intruder said simply. A symbol of him choosing a life we did not approve. Zion stepped forward, blocking the stranger's path. You're not touching her. The intruder near the front door laughed. Zion, always interfering. You think you can save him forever? I'm not saving him, Zion replied, eyes blazing. I'm saving her. The tension crackled like electricity. Without warning, the intruder closest to them lunged forward. Zion reacted instantly, flashlight beam blinding the attacker as he swung his arm, striking with swift precision. The man stumbled back, cursing, but didn't fall. He was stronger, trained, determined. The second intruder moved from behind, rushing toward Rayanne and Alina. Rayanne shoved Alina aside just as the intruder lunged. Run! Rayanne shouted. But there was nowhere to run. The attacker grabbed Rayanne by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Alina screamed as Rayanne's head struck the edge of a cabinet with a sickening thud. Rayanne! Zion spun toward the sound, but he was tackled from behind by the first intruder. The two men crashed to the floor, struggling violently. Alina crawled toward Rayanne, whose vision was blurred, blood trickling from his forehead. She cupped his face with shaking hands. Stay with me, please. His breathing was uneven. Alina, listen to me, the woman from the phone, she's connected to all of this. She tried to warn me. Before he could finish, the intruder holding him dragged him upright like a rag doll. Enough talking, the man snarled. She comes with us. Alina froze. She? her? Rayanne thrashed weakly. No. Take me instead, but the intruder tightened his grip, eyes locked on Alina. You're coming. Now. And with Zion pinned, Rayanne injured, and no path left, Alina realized her life was no longer in her hands. Alina's mind raced, her pulse roaring like thunder in her ears as the intruder's hand reached for her. Every instinct screamed to run, to fight, to do anything, yet her body refused to move. Fear held her tightly, like invisible chains. Rayanne, bleeding and barely conscious, struggled against the grip of the man holding him. Don't touch her, he shouted, voice raw with desperation. The intruder ignored him and stepped closer to Alina. You will come quietly, he said, or Rayanne dies here. Rayanne's knees buckled. His head dropped. Alina, don't. Don't listen to him. Zion, pinned beneath the first intruder, twisted violently, managing to push him back just long enough to reach for his fallen flashlight. With a swift motion, he hurled it toward the second attacker. It struck the man's wrist, causing him to loosen his grip on Rayanne. Now, Alina, move. Zion barked. The command jolted her awake. She stumbled backward, her hands grabbing the nearest object, a small decorative vase. Without thinking, she swung it with all her strength, striking the intruder's arm. He cursed and lunged toward her, fury igniting in his eyes. But before he could reach her, Zion tackled him from the side, the two crashing into the dining table. Glass shattered everywhere. A lamp fell, plunging the room into even deeper darkness. Rayanne tried to stand, but pain forced him to his knees. Alina, run, she shook her head fiercely. I'm not leaving without you. The struggle between Zion and the two intruders intensified, grunts, breaking furniture, frantic footsteps filling the air. Zion managed to overpower one, slamming him against the wall, but the other pulled a concealed blade, lunging toward Rayanne. No. Alina screamed as she threw herself between them, but the blade never reached her. Instead, Zion intercepted the attacker, grabbing his arm and forcing it back with brutal strength. The knife clattered to the ground. Zion kicked it across the room. Breathing heavily, he turned to them. We need to go. Now. There will be more coming. Rayanne staggered beside Alina, leaning heavily on her. I'm sorry. I should have told you everything. Alina wrapped her arm around him, her voice steady despite her trembling body. We'll figure it out together. But we have to survive tonight first. Zion opened the back door, scanning the darkness outside. Stay close. They won't stop until they get what they want. Alina took one last look at the shattered home, the place meant to start her new life. Instead, it had become the beginning of a nightmare. With Rayanne beside her and Zion leading the way. She stepped into the night, unaware that this escape would only drag her deeper into a world she never knew existed.